What if I told you there once lived a king, so disfigured that his own people whispered he was marked by the devil himself? His name was Charles II of Spain, a ruler whose very appearance shocked courtiers into silence. They gave him the title El Hechizado, the bewitched king. But the truth is darker. Charles was never cursed by demons. He was the victim of something far more dangerous. His own dynasty's obsession with bloodline. This is the downfall of Europe's most powerful royal family. A story that produced a monarch so damaged that when doctors opened his body after death, what they found seemed beyond human belief. If you're ready to explore hidden truths history books often ignore, stay with me, because this is just the beginning. 1. The jaw that never closed. When envoys first laid eyes on Charles II, they struggled to hide their shock. The King of Spain stood before them, unable to shut his mouth. His jaw jutted forward so severely, his lips could not meet, leaving his mouth always open, like a door hanging off its hinges. This was no random defect. It was the legacy of 2 centuries of family inbreeding. The Habsburgs believed in keeping power within their circle. Cousins wed cousins, uncles married nieces, and sometimes a single person could be their own relative several times over. Charles's parents themselves were uncle and niece. His grandparents too repeated the same pattern. By the time he was born, his genetic pool was as shallow as an isolated island family. The result was what doctors now call mandibular prognathism, the infamous Habsburg jaw. His lower jaw stuck out so far that even when his mouth was closed, a coin could pass through the gap between his teeth. Eating was nearly impossible. The top row of teeth rested entirely behind the bottom row. Chewing was hopeless. Palace cooks were forced to grind his meals into soft mush. Soups dripped from his lips. Solid food slid out. And banquets turned into grotesque scenes where servants wiped drool from the king's chin. His speech too was barely understood. His deformity twisted every word into wet mumbles. So much that even his own advisors often failed to comprehend him. Letters from his mother, Queen Mariana, reveal her fear that her son might choke to death on his tongue at night. The most powerful man in Europe was seen as a constant choking risk. And yet the family continued their destructive marriages, valuing power above the suffering of their children. Charles himself became a living testament to what happens when human genetics collapse. 2. A body that defied reason. The Habsburg jaw was only one part of his tragedy. Charles II's entire body was warped in ways that made him look less like a king and more like a walking curse. At 35, he resembled a frail child, shrunken and bent by some cruel hand. Barely 5 feet tall, his head grew oversized, compared to his fragile frame, his neck thin and weak, his arms and legs skeletal, while his torso seemed compressed and hunched. Charles could not even walk until he was 8 years old. When he finally learned, his steps were clumsy shuffles, clinging to walls like a man 3 times his age. His spine bent so severely, he appeared forever stooped, carrying the weight of centuries of genetic ruin. His mind suffered as much as his body. He lagged years behind other children, unable to read until 10, and even then with little understanding. Tutors described him as a vessel with holes. No knowledge remained inside. His emotions too were unstable. Fits of screaming tantrums followed by hours of vacant silence. His hair grew thin, patchy, and lifeless, falling away in clumps. painters tasked with immortalizing him in royal portraits could only disguise so much. Each year his condition worsened. While most matured and stabilized, Charles deteriorated, like a body fighting against life itself, baffling doctors who had no answers for what they saw. 3. The King Without Heirs. His tragedy turned into disaster for Europe. The mighty throne of Spain was held by a man unable to produce a child. Charles married twice. The first was Marie-Louise of Orleans, a lively French princess, whose wedding night ended in tears and confusion. The king's underdeveloped organs made him incapable of consummation. Yet the blame fell cruelly on her. She was forced into humiliating examinations, bizarre remedies, and endless prayers until her health failed. She died at 26. Rumors swirled that stress and treatments hastened her end. Desperate for an heir, Charles remarried Maria Anna of Neuburg. She too discovered quickly the truth. Her husband could never father a child. Physicians from across Europe prodded and measured, seeking solutions with potions, charms, and even mystical rituals. Nothing changed, and all of Europe watched with anticipation, knowing his death would leave a power vacuum. The War of Spanish Succession was already inevitable, because their king could not fulfill the simplest duty of a monarch: 4. Exorcisms in the palace. When medicine failed, priests declared Charles possessed. Demons, they said, tormented his body and soul. What followed were public exorcisms inside the royal halls. Nobles were forced to watch their king writhing on the ground, while holy men shouted Latin prayers over him. Charles gagged on holy water mixed with relic dust, vomited, shook violently, and sometimes collapsed. The priests insisted these were demons fleeing his body. The rituals escalated into burning possessions of past queens, foreign gifts, and furniture, and bonfires meant to purge witchcraft. Charles believed it worked. Each time priests promised he was cleansed, he begged for more ceremonies, convinced this was his only hope. 5. The autopsy that terrified Europe. In 1700, Charles II died, at only 38 years old. The truth of his condition was finally revealed when royal doctors opened his body. What they found horrified them. His heart was no bigger than a walnut, shriveled and black. His lungs, rotten and foul-smelling. His intestines, decayed. His reproductive organs, nearly undeveloped. His skull was filled with fluid, and a damaged brain that explained his weakness and erratic mind. The physician who performed the autopsy declared it a miracle Charles lived at all, for his body held not one healthy organ. The report was so shocking it fueled belief that the king truly had been cursed. Spain's dynasty collapsed with him, and Europe erupted into the War of Spanish Succession, a decade-long slaughter that took countless lives. The Habsburgs' obsession with purity destroyed their own bloodline and their empire. The tragic end of Charles II proved that sometimes the greatest enemy of kings is not revolt or invaders, but the very blood flowing in their veins.